Thank you. And uh, this was, as I mentioned, like last of the first 6 presentations, very solid team, very solid product. And before going into the next one, I would like to share what we usually do at LAUNCHub. Because as I mentioned, this founder-to-founder networking and talking effect is pretty picking up. And what we do usually, we take some of our companies and we go into the Bay Area, we go in London, and the purpose of these trips is not just like going a trip for Google, blah, 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 but meet real founders with all their like personal problems, personal experience that are currently facing. And at one such trip in the UK, we were pretty happy to work with some founders there. And that's why we wanted also to invite them here to present their company. Not just that these are like a very hot company in London, but also these guys are kind of changing the way investments are done. So practically for all of you as investors, they're gonna kind of change, not kind of sweep us away, but kind of change our way we do business, and we kind of open up to founders. And these are Seedrs, and one of the founders, Carlos, will do a talk.
Hi, my name is Carlos from Seedrs. I would like first of all to thank LAUNCHub for inviting us to be here today. It's a great opportunity to meet you guys and to get to know some of the startups here today, which up till now seem really, really interesting. So I would just like to start. I'm going to try not to take too much of your time because at the end of the day we're all here to watch the startups. But I'm just going to tell you a little bit about what Seedrs is and how we started. Seedrs is the leading equity crowdfunding platform in Europe. We started working on this in early 2009, so quite a long time ago, and it took us almost 3 years to get to market. The reason for that was that what we do may sometimes feel kind of similar to platforms like Kickstarter and all that, but in Kickstarter you get a t-shirt or you get a coffee mug or you get a sample of the product. With Seedrs you get shares in a company, shares in an early stage startup. And that means that we're a financial services company, and that means that we have to be regulated and authorized. And in July 2012, Seedrs became the first platform anywhere in the world for equity crowdfunding to get regulatory approval, and we became authorized by the Financial Services Authority in the UK. So we started operating in the UK. We're now open to the rest of Europe. And our model is actually quite simple. As an entrepreneur, you can come to our platform, fill in a kind of an application saying what market you're targeting, what are you doing, what your team are, just simple stuff. We then approve that campaign and work with the entrepreneurs to brush it up and make it sometimes more interesting and more engaging. Then it enters our platform, becomes available to our users. Any of our users can then look at those campaigns and decide to invest directly through the platform. So it's a very simple and lean and efficient process, and it's all done online. Seedrs was started because me as an entrepreneur had a problem. And my problem was, if all I have is an idea and maybe a team, and all I need is like 30K, 40K, 50K, how do I go about raising money? I mean, that's kind of, or it may be easy to do if you have a rich uncle or a friend with money, or if you have some money yourself. But if you've just been through business school and you've spent all your money in business school, that's not so easy to do. And if you don't know any business angel or any investors, that's even more difficult to do. So we were struggling with this issue, and at the same time I was looking at platforms like kiva.org, which allow people to lend small amounts to entrepreneurs in third world countries. And I thought, well, why can't we just do something like this, but for startups? So Seedrs came out of the idea of really helping entrepreneurs, and that's what we do. We not only allow startups to raise capital through us, but we do it in a structure that is very friendly for startups, for accelerators, for VCs to then invest in those startups. We act as nominees for the underlying investors, which means that when the startup has an exit or has to raise future rounds, they only have to deal with us and not with hundreds of small investors. So we make it really easy for them to do that, and we establish relationships with accelerators, angels, and VCs to allow them to raise further rounds and to work with them as well. But we're also for investors, because at the end of the day, the market only exists if there are investors willing to invest, and if investors feel like their rights are being protected. So Seedrs was, from the start, built in a way that protected investors and made sure that on an exit, investors would get their returns. That's also one of the reasons why we have the nominee arrangement. That's why we sign typical subscription agreements that normal VCs and normal professional angels sign, standard stuff, but that really tries to protect small investors. And because we act as nominees, we can make sure that the company is reporting on a regular basis through the platform, all very lean, all done online, but that they're reporting to their investors. And at the end of the day, Seedrs is for you. Whether you're an entrepreneur, whether you're not an investor but want to start investing in startups, and whether you're an accelerator or a professional investor. Because part of what we do is we fit into the ecosystem. And we work with angels, we work with VCs, we work with accelerators in two specific ways. One, we help top up some of their rounds. So it's a way for investors to leverage their investment and also get some money into those companies from the crowds. And for professional investors, we have specific structures where they sit outside of the nominee arrangement and they invest directly in the same way that they would do, but they're just leveraging that investment by having other investors come in as well. And from an entrepreneur's perspective, it's a great way to access other kinds of capital, to not only raise money from your professional investors that you already know, but also to raise money from your close community and your future clients, and to raise money from all over Europe. So we're really, more than anything, opening up a huge new asset class to a huge new pool of capital. How do you make money? Well, we make money by aligning our interests with the interests of our investors and our startups. We don't make money if the startups don't succeed. So there's no pay to pitch. There's no fixed fees for being on the platform. If the entrepreneur doesn't raise the amount that they're trying to raise, they don't pay us anything. We all lose. That's fine. But if they do if they are successful in raising the money, we take 7.5% of what they raise. And that covers not only finding all these investors and all that, but all the administrative stuff that we do. And sometimes people don't realize that, but we take care of all the bureaucracy. So instead of having to hire lawyers to go through all the subscription agreements and all of that boring stuff, we already have our stuff done, and it's all very straightforward, all very lean. We manage the investment. We take care of all of the bureaucracy. And then, if the company is successful and the investors make a profit, we take a 7.5% carry of that profit. Again, this is for smaller investors who are in our nominee arrangement. Larger investors who invest directly alongside the crowds, that's a completely different matter. They don't pay us anything on exit because at the end of the day, it's their money. They're managing the investment. So that's how we make money. We make money if the startups make money and if the startups succeed. And we think this aligns very well with the interests of our investors and our entrepreneurs. So where are we at the moment? As I said, we launched in the UK 21 months ago. We expanded to Europe in November. And right now we have more than 35,000 users. We have helped more than 81 campaigns raise funds through us. About 9 million euros. In the last 6 months alone, we raised 6 million euros through our platform. And we're growing at about 70–80% per quarter. So things are looking Very good. And we are becoming more and more and more international with investors from over 44 countries right now. So we're doing okay. Not as many awards as Ronaldo, but we're doing okay. And we've won a number of awards that recognize us as one of the leaders in the fintech sector. But way more important than that is the fact that our startups are getting the kind of validation that shows that the model is successful and works, and that we're doing our job well. We've had some of our startups, I mean, there's no exits, it's way too early for that. We've only been operating for a little bit more than 1.5 years, and that's way too early for an exit. But we've had some of our startups go and raise money from top-tier VCs like Balderton and enter accelerator programs like Seed Camp and raise money from Passion Capital. So we've shown that our model is fully compatible with additional rounds of capital from VCs, from professional angels, and we've also shown that it's a great way to leverage other people's investments. So we've had accelerators and angels and VCs also invest in startups and then get them to raise more money through Seedrs. So it's both in both directions. And some of our case studies, one is Future Ad Labs. So do you guys know what CAPTCHAs are? Okay, CAPTCHAs are those very, very annoying bits of distorted text that somehow you have to guess in order to enter a website or to log in or create an account. And they're really, really terrible. I hate them. Future Ad Labs came up with a way to do the same thing as a CAPTCHA, so recognize whether you're a human or a robot, but by solving little games, little puzzles branded for Coca-Cola, Nike, whatever. And it's a much more friendly way and more interesting way to really test whether you're a human or not. They've raised money on Seedrs. They then merged with their main competitors, and they've now raised money from Balderton and Passion Capital. So they're doing okay, and I think they're going to revolutionize the CAPTCHA market. The other one is Satego, who's helping companies recover some of their debts. They've also raised money on Seedrs from 61 investors, and they've now been accepted and won one of the Seed Camp events, and they've now been accepted to Seed Camp. They're also developing quite fast, and I think this is going to be a huge market for them. So I don't want to take any more of your time, but I'm more than happy to answer any questions that you may have. And thanks for listening to me.
Actually, I have a question. You're originally from Portugal, and then you moved to London, and you have like a co-founder from US, and kind of like, I would want to share with us like how the Portuguese system connecting to London and all that stuff, because it's probably going to be interesting for us to know here.
So, yes, I'm originally from Portugal. I'm actually based in Lisbon most of the time, even though I spend a lot of time flying back and forth. I feel like Heathrow is my second home. And the reason why we decided to do that, and I think that's one of the reasons why lots of startups do the same thing in Bulgaria, is Lisbon is actually a great place to have an engineering, a design, an infrastructure team. It's way cheaper than in London, awesome technical talent, much better weather, much better food, better living standards. So it kind of feels a little bit like Sofia in a way. And initially we thought that most of the investors in London would kind of frown on it and ask, well, why the hell don't you have everyone together here in London? Well, a few did ask about that. We then explained our reasoning behind that, and they were like, yeah, okay, that makes absolute sense. No worries at all. That's fine. So that was not a problem when we launched. There are a few issues that end up appearing once the team starts to grow, because there's communication issues, and you have to find ways to manage that. You need to have a little bit more processes than if all the team was in the same place, because their communication happens naturally. But if you have the team split into 2 offices, you need to enforce more Skype calls and a little bit more meetings and all that. But we learned that the hard way. We learned by doing. And at the end of the day, we think we have a system that is working pretty well. We have 10 people in London, 10 people in Lisbon, and it's going very well. But it took us a little while to really understand what the right model for us was and what the right balance between meetings and kind of being more informal was.
Can you give us an average profile of investors investing through Seedrs? And then probably the second part of the question, do you do any pre-assessments for the campaigns being run on
Sure.
Seedrs?
So profile for our investors and whether we do a pre-assessment of the campaigns that are on the platform. I think there are at least two typical profiles of investors on the platform. You have investors like me, who invested in 18 companies through the platform, but very small amounts. I don't have a lot of money to invest. And these are mostly guys that have some money on the side, like startups, like entrepreneurship, and want to invest a little bit of money in a significant number of startups. It's mostly about diversifying and being engaged with it. Young professionals, again, some money on the side, they're doing okay. So we're talking about like the top 20% of the population in terms of net worth, which is still a much wider range than typical business angels, which is usually 0.5% of the population. We then also have professional angels. Professional angels that see our platform as a way to diversify their investments. So they're still doing like 50K, 100K investments, going onto the board and stuff like that. But they're also getting some of their money and spreading their bets into 10, 20, 30, 40 startups. And they don't want to be as involved, and they want the process to be as streamlined and as simple as possible. So we have these two kinds of investors. In terms of whether we verify and whether we validate the campaigns or not, we try not to take we try not to judge whether the business is going to be successful or not. That's for the entrepreneurs to decide. We do make sure that the campaign is good enough and well presented and engaging, and we verify whether everything that is said on the campaign is backed by proper evidence. So we do verify that, and we reject a number of applications because of those two factors. But we try not to decide whether the campaign is going to be successful or not, because at the end of the day, our guess is as good as yours. So I don't think we have more time for questions.
But I'm sure like later on a lot of
I'll
these
be
guys
around,
are
so
gonna-
catch
but
up.
Don't give them any money. Just reserve for the startups that are gonna pitch in a while.
Or give us money. Thank you very much.
So thank you. Thank Carlos. So going back to the next 6 pages, and thanks again for Carlos and kind of showing another view about investing and how it's done.